So what do you want to say about Jim Croce?
Nothing.
Nothing? Nothing? Hey everyone, I'm Wes Martin,
My name is New Hong
and this is Appetite.
for Music.
And today we're going to be talking about the great American singer-songwriter, Jim Croce.
Yeah,
So-
I never heard about him before.
Well, gee, I wonder why. Jim Croce was a singer-songwriter from the United States. He was born in Philadelphia on January 10th, 1943, and he's best known for a string of hit singles that he recorded in the early 1970s, and they include many classics, such as Bad, Bad Leroy Brown, which peaked at number 1 in the Billboard Hot 100 charts, as well as many sort of soft ballads.
Yeah, to me, his song is a little folky, country, little.
Right, and that reflects a lot of what Jim Croce kind of grew up with. Jim Croce grew up in a mostly working to middle-class home, kind of typical of Pennsylvania, and he was exposed to a lot of that kind of music, especially when he was a student radio jockey at Villanova College.
Ah,
And he also played in a student exchange band in both Yugoslavia and Africa. So he was also bringing these kinds of music all around the world, even when he was fairly unknown as an artist. And his trajectory was basically that he got married to his wife that he met when he was only 19. Her name was Ingrid. And they started working on music together. They moved to New York City to try to start that, and they couldn't get it off the ground.
did not work well.
So he went back to rural Pennsylvania, and he worked odd jobs, often as a truck driver, teaching guitar on construction crews. And he wrote songs about a lot of the characters that he would see, both on work sites and, going out to bars. Jim Croce recorded 3 big albums, the first of which was called, of course, You Don't Mess Around with Jim in 1972, and that was followed by the album Life and Times in 1973. Those were the only 2 major label albums released in his lifetime, because he was tragically killed in a plane crash after a performance at a college with his guitarist and backup vocalist, Maury Muehlhausen. And Jim Croce was 30 when he passed, and Maury Muehlhausen was only 24. So after he passed on, there was one final album that was released, I Got a Name, and that peaked at number 2 on the Billboard charts. After his death, released on December 1st, 1973, Jim Croce died in that same year. An all too common tragic story of an artist that was taken away too soon, but thankfully left behind a pretty prolific body of work for us to talk about. Very quickly, the CD that we're going to be talking about today is a compilation album named after one of my favorite Jim Croce songs called Photographs and Memories, his greatest hits. And this was put out as an album by Atlantic Records. And if we look at the track list, we have, of course, Bad Bad Leroy Brown, Operator, Photographs and Memories, Rapid Roy the Stock Car Boy, written about a famous race car driver who was once a moonshine runner, Time in a Bottle, New York is Not My Home, Working at the Car Wash Blues, I Got a Name, I'll Have to Say I Love You in a Song, You Don't Mess Around with Jim, Lover's Cross, One Less Set of Footsteps, These Dreams, and, this one was a comedy, The Roller Derby Queen.
That was comedy.
That was a comedy song. It's about falling in love with a fat
Portly, rotund, exhibiting an elevated body mass index.
girl.
Okay.
Yeah, that was back when you could record music like that, see?
I didn't get the lyrics.
Clearly, time has passed on since a lot of these legendary songs were recorded in the 70s, but... Right, so now that we've talked a little bit about the life and times of Jim Croce, let's get into our picks for our favorite Croce tunes. So Neil, we'll start with you. What did you pick?
For me, of course, I have to go with Time in a Bottle.
Of course, and this one definitely has a bit of a funny story about how well it performed internationally.
Yeah, and also I can hear that music from a lot of movies.
Really?
Yeah, recently from this one,
X-Men.
X-Men.
Days
of Future Past.
So we'll have it right there. Time in a Bottle, track number 21.
So you can just watch the movie and you cannot miss this song in the movie. It is like a very quiet scene, but with loud music.
It says it was released in 2014. So that was actually 41 years after the song was originally released as a single.
I read about the Time in a Bottle that he wrote the song for his first album.
Yeah, You Don't Mess Around with Jim.
Jim. But I read that song got much more bigger after he passed away, like right after his death. And I read like because of the lyric of the song, the company decided to release it as a single.
So, what was your other expert pick?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with I Got a Name.
That's a good choice.
That song was like little catch for my ear.
It was the only song, I think, or one of the very few that he recorded that he did not write or compose himself. And throughout it makes references to his father, because his father thought that Jim Croce would fail to become a famous musician and never succeed. And Jim Croce's own father, I think, passed away before Jim Croce himself became famous. So his father never got to see his son succeed.
Oh, that's bad. This song is also included in another X-Men movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, titled Logan, which is actually Wolverine 3, Part 3 movie. Somehow, filmmakers of the X-Men series
they seem to like Jim Croce.
Yeah, somehow, man. Like 2 songs in one big movie series.
Somehow they always have room for Jim Croce. As for my expert picks, my first go-to, which is a song I vividly remember hearing when I was a little boy, my father and my mother would turn this song on in the car, is biggest hit, Bad Bad Leroy Brown, which was actually written about a man that Jim met while stationed in the Army.
Oh, in the Army?
Yeah, in the Army. He recalled meeting a man named Leroy Brown, and Leroy Brown was a sort of a big, tough guy, nobody was the boss of him, and nobody could tell him what to do. And he decided to go absent without official leave, aka AWOL. He ran away. But somehow he thought he could go back to ask for his paycheck. And, of course, they slammed him into handcuffs, and that was that. And as they were hauling him away, he was saying, "This isn't the last you'll ever hear of me." And he decided he liked it, and he proceeded to write a #1 hit. It's very interesting to hear the live version of this song because it's substantially different. There is some very intricate guitar playing that Jim Croce does, switching very quickly between the G and the C chord and sliding it up, the major chords all the way down the neck. And this was covered up by drumming and the piano playing in the studio recording.
Okay, I think I have to check it.
Yeah, it's got a very percussive feel to the guitar.
And I want to add one little story with that song. And somehow, Freddie Mercury liked that song, and he liked Jim Croce, and he made a tribute song for him.
Oh, yeah.
And that song title is Bring Back That Leroy Brown.
Which is very surprising, knowing how Freddie Mercury was in his persona and how flamboyant he was. And Jim Croce was the opposite of that in just about every way. He was the common working man styled singer.
This song is in their 3rd album, Sheer Heart Attack, and it's quite a short song, but it was not just in their album. They played it in the live show too. And Brian May, the guitarist of Queen, he played with banjo for just second, ding 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 ding, and just pass it to the step guy. The song itself is kind of humorous way, and looks like Freddie Mercury liked it.
So my other expert pick was a song that only peaked at number 17 on the Billboard Hot 100, Operator.
Okay.
And Operator is about how you're trying to find the girl you've not been with for a long time. You want to talk to her and just see how she is. And you're talking to the telephone operator, actually.
Okay.
And you're trying to put more dimes in there, and you can't remember where the girl lives, and you're just trying to connect with another human to try and hear you out and hear about your problem and get you through to the person you want to talk to. And at the end of the song, he gives up and he says, "Thank you for your time. You can keep the dime." Jim Croce's voice itself actually deserves a lot of credit too, It's actually quite a heavy voice, I think. And so I think that adds to what he had to offer.
One thing I wanted to mention to you, I heard Time in a Bottle like thousands, many times, like hundreds of times like that, but I never heard his name as Jim Croce in my life.
I know. Like when I first wanted to say, hey man, let's talk about some Jim Croce or check out this song. And he's like, who's Jim Croce? I'm like, Time in a Bottle.
In Korean website, if you search about him, then his name is not written as Jim Croce in Korean language. It is written as Jim Croce.
Jim Croce.
Because
what?
The spelling is C-R-O-C-E.
Oh, but people don't know that it's an Italian name.
No.
So they just wrote it as Croce.
Yes.
And in South Korea, Time in a Bottle is actually Jim Croce's only famous song.
It is. I never heard other song from him.
And it's really funny because a lot of times with famous American or European artists from the 70s and 80s, there's a minor hit, which is typically softer, not as fast-paced, not as hard-hitting as the songs that were big in the United States or in the United Kingdom. And that song gets picked due to Koreans' preferences for softer, more harmonious music to be the big hit. For example, Don McLean is most famous for American Pie. But instead, in South Korea, his big hit is Vincent. So in America, you say Jim Croce, everybody goes Leroy Brown. But in South Korea, it's Time in the Bottle, but very few people actually know that it's Jim Croce.
Some people might know his name as Jim Croce.
Right, of course. Yeah, that's Jim Croce. Yeah, you're very close.
Very close.
On that note, good collection of singles. I would say that Jim Croce, to this day, is incredibly underrated. That had he had time to live and bring out his whole career to fruition, I think that we would know even more of him than we do now, even though in the United States he's still a household name today.
Yeah, and I want to add just one little story. I find about his songs and credits, and I found one familiar name. It was Michael Kamen.
Michael Kamen?
Yeah. He's one of quite big film composer in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. He did the movie series of Die Hard series and Lethal Weapon series, like those films. And also...
No way!
He arranged a symphony orchestra for Metallica.
What?
So basically, Michael Kamen, like in his early days, he did some pop or rock stuff. I heard like that, and I didn't know it was working for him.
For Jim Croce. What can we say? On that note, this has been Appetite for Music. I'm Wes Martin.
My name is Neil Hong.
Go ahead, give us a like, give us a comment. Tell us what's your favorite Jim Croce song. What song touches you the most? Where have you heard Jim Croce in your life and times? Let us know. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So, we are out.